So this part of our men's weekend is what we call In the Mind of a Man. And today we're going to plunge the depths of the mind of Chris Brooks. Yeah. Let me give you a biography of Chris. All right, so Chris has been pastoring for over 20 years in a large church setting, and currently he serves in a micro church environment.
Right? Yeah.
And he's trying to spread, I thought you'd appreciate this, infection and inoculation of a church in every neighborhood.
Yep.
He's a natural storyteller and a gifted teacher, as you should know if you've been paying attention. He's earned a master's of divinity degree and a doctor of ministry degrees. But do we always have to call you Master Doctor? We don't have to do that?
Just my wife.
Just your wife, okay.
So,
yes.
Right.
All right.
And it's never happened. So, if we're telling
he's married to Audrey, and they have 4 children.
Yeah.
You still remember the names of the 4?
I do, just not how old they are, because they're constantly changing.
Okay. He gets fired up by creating environments where broken people can become brave people again. Some people you meet they're called by the wild. They need to get outside under a big sky where untamed terrain and feral animals are all around. But Chris, he's a man who hears the call of a wild gospel. That's how I experience you.
Thank you.
And it takes you on paths and places and people that don't always make sense.
Yeah, bless the Lord.
Okay. So we're going to start this conversation, and we'll start with a warm-up round. Okay. It's going to be kind of a speed round. You get kind of 2 choices. You got to make one.
Okay.
Ready? Okay.
I apologize if anything offensive comes out of my mouth, okay? Because this is not scripted.
Well, what are you apologizing for?
I'm preemptively saying I love Jesus, and sometimes I use inappropriate language.
Okay. Well, we'll just assume this is one of the many ways God wants to pour contempt on all your pride.
Okay, perfect.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, you ready?
I am.
Okay. A good nap or a good movie?
Oh, a good movie.
No shirt or no shoes?
No shoes.
A good beard or a good smile?
Good smile. Like for someone else, like if I'm looking at someone else, rather than compare which brings pride or shame to their beard, I'd rather see a good smile.
You bunch of beard losers out there. Do you want to do without or owe a favor?
Oh, a favor. Absolutely.
Drive or navigate?
Neither. Just put me in the back seat and tell me when we're there.
Audiobook or music?
Audiobook, 100%.
You want to be on time or take your time?
Be on time.
Early morning or late night?
Early mornings.
Mountains or the ocean?
Mountains.
Go for a hike or lay in a hammock?
How about go for a hike then lay in the hammock?
Dog or cat?
Dog, dude, come on. I've got a freaking cat. Man, I got enough things in my life that don't return my affection. I don't need a damn animal doing that as well. We've got because I have daughters. I have a lot of things I don't want. But I've got it. We lost one, but this cat comes in and it kills chipmunks and moles, but brings them inside, leaves them half alive, so then lays it down so the dog can kill it. So in the last week, I've taken out 3 dead chipmunks. That's been my...
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, that was more than you bargained for.
So dog is the answer.
Yeah, the answer is dog. Yeah. It's great.
But a person can still love cats and Jesus can still save them?
Next question.
Okay. Last one, Jordan or LeBron?
Jordan.
It is Jordan, okay.
That's just my generation.
All the old heads said amen. Okay.
All the kids are like, who? That guy's named after the sneaker?
All right, tell us a little bit, how did you come to faith?
I can still remember, I grew up in a really conservative, fundamentalist home.
What does that mean? What does that look like?
That's a great follow-up question. Thank you for asking. It looks as though we believe in God, but we're not really sure we love him that much, or that he loves us. It was one, I think, that was based off of fear and consequences, not love and acceptance. And that's a great short-term motivator. But long-term, it has some pretty disastrous consequences. My brother came, we went to a Christian school for a little bit, and my brother get in the back of the Chevy Impala, two-door, and of course my brother sits up front because he's older, and he turns around and goes, "Chris," I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Guess what?" I'm like, "What?" "I'm going to heaven and you're going to hell. Nah, 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 nah." Like,
Sibling evangelism. We'll have a
Yeah,
class next.
So I can just remember, you didn't have to convince me I was a sinner. Man, I knew that my whole life, and I can remember being on my bottom bunk just going, "Jesus, if you're real, please save me." And I think that began the process of discovering this dangerous, wild, loving Jesus who I could trust with everything. And so, at least for me in my life, this is my heart communicating, not my theological framework. It's been a series of conversions. That's where the journey began. But no one told me that in a life of discipleship, it would actually get harder and more consequential to continue to surrender your life to Jesus.
Give us some kind of coordinates for your life.
Yeah.
How long you been married, and then what's your wife doing and your kids doing these days?
Yeah. I've been married 22 years. My wife, when we first had our first child, we said if at all possible, we'd love for you to be able to be home with them. And so that definitely meant issues with standard of living, but quality of life has never been higher. She's helping me get microchurches off and running. We've always been partners in ministry. She's the better minister, much more gifted at actually creating organisms and structures that support outcomes, which I love. But just recently, she got her master's in social work, and part of her life's call is to be with people during defining moments of her life. And she's walked through, you don't need to hear my wife's whole story, but there's a significant amount of tragedy and death in her backstory. And for some reason, she's attracted to that, to be around people during that time. So just recently, she looked at me and she said, "Hey, I'm ready to start getting back into what I was trained for. I want to start volunteering for hospice." She wants to work hospice or work at a funeral home. That's my wife. So God bless her. It's not where I'm attracted to. And it was one of the most proudest moments in my marriage so far when she told me that she was ready to start doing that. What I immediately did is start calculating, I'm screwed with starting this church because you're stepping out and I can no longer take advantage of your willingness. And I said, "That's awesome. How can I support you?" "Oh, crap." So I'm trying to learn how. She's been such an advocate for me. How can I return the favor? What can I do to it's in your DNA to sacrifice and put others first, and I want to learn how to do that for you. Kids, I got 4 kids at 4 different schools, 18 all the way down to 9. Girls are in the middle, boys are the bookends.
You have an adopted child.
I do, the youngest.
Let me do a quick poll. If adoption's in your family, you got an adopted child, could you raise your hand real quick? So this is part of your tribe, right?
Yeah. What's
So speak to the rest of us. What do you and what do these guys know about God that the rest of us don't know?
I'll speak for me personally, and I think every adoption story is different. Christopher is African American. By the way, he has my name. He's Christopher Michael Brooks Jr., which I love, because don't ever doubt that you're mine. Don't ever doubt it. What's fun is when we adopted him, we were living in Tuscaloosa. We were doing college ministry. So we were missionary to those people. We adapted their culture and their tribe. So I say Roll Tide a lot just as a colloquialism. Just stay with me. His birth mom is from Auburn, so it's a foreign adoption. I often tell this is unhealthy. You can talk to my counselor about it, but I often tell people I think I needed to adopt him more than he needed to be adopted. And to hold a son who you loved and prayed for and didn't know, to finally hold him in your arms and go, if this is 1/1000th of a fraction of what the Father feels for me, I'll take it. So it's so beautiful. I'm honored to be his dad.
This emotion that you're kind of trying to brick wall back, you're saying this is just a speck of what the Father feels towards us. What motivates you as a husband and a father?
I think all of us have places and pockets in our childhood where, again, I think Robert was great. We're not blaming, but we are saying there were certain things that we needed that we didn't get. And so for me as a husband and a father, I want to give my kids a different legacy. I want them to be able, I want to be able to love them for who God has created them to be, not who I desire them to be. And try to appreciate that and call that out and set it free.
What are you afraid of as a husband and a father?
Oh, excuse me. The immense power we have as men to shape their lives. And I think my greatest fear is that I would use that power to wound.
In some way, God entrusts us with a power to bring life or to bring death.
Yeah. Yep.
And that should frighten us, that we could be conveyors of death to our kids.
And also that I wouldn't step in and to own that power. Because just because it can be used for harm doesn't mean that I shouldn't step in to use it for good.
How's your marriage these days?
Oh, it's delightful. The Lord's done such incredible healing in me. And I think I was telling Neil this the other night. Like, I love her more than I did the day that we married her. And I'm watching her age right in front of my eyes. I'm watching the wrinkles and the weight, and I love it. And I never would have said that as a 20-year-old. My favorite quote is from Philip Yancey. He said, I thought it was love that would teach me what marriage was all about, but it was marriage that taught me what love was all about. Thank you.
Does she know that you love her more?
Yes.
How does she experience that? How does she know?
I think she sees my tenderness and my advocacy for her. And then also, I don't full court press her anymore. When she's in a difficult area, she'll tell me, you take that pastor hat off. Don't do that crap to me. And I'm trying to genuinely love you and be present and just learning that calibration of when do I press, when do I pull back, and all are both signs of affection.
How's your soul these days?
Oh, it's good. It's tender. I'm in a season where I am super grateful for the life that I have.
That's joy-giving?
Yes.
Super grateful?
Yes.
Yeah. What's the hardest conversation that you've had lately?
The Lord's taken me through some of my anger's a difficult emotion for me. And so
Difficult in what way? Like experiencing it, or
yes,
like anger from others, or you're the angry?
both and. Yeah. And confrontation is not something that comes naturally to me. I'm trying to get better at it. I had a difficult conversation recently. I was watching a ministry that I used to lead, and so I'm trying to keep up with it and pray for them. A lot of people are still on staff that I care about, and I'm watching one of the guest speakers, who was another one of our campus pastors, come in, and he ripped off a talk I did. Preaching.
Like how much rip off? Like
Oh, do we want to go down this rabbit hole?
like just the
Of
opening
how
illustration?
personally freaking offended I was.
Did he even change the stories?
It was a talk that I did that I spent an incredible amount of creative time and energy into creating a grid and some stories and this and that. And I was so angry. I went in and told my wife, and she was more angry for me. I was so mad I went back and watched the talk and realized you ripped off more stuff than I really remembered. Like, he said something that was really cheesy. I'm like, that's so cheesy. Went back and like, oh yeah, I said that. And my natural tendency would have been to take that anger sideways and to disparage him and to talk about him, not talk to him.
To gather.
Yeah.
Got a
Oh,
little
yeah,
team.
yeah.
Did you guys see what's?
Yeah. Coward's way of handling conflict. And so I had a difficult conversation, reached out to him, tried to be as loving, as gracious as possible. And then my spiritual director that's teaching me this in conflict, he says, you need to ask very clearly for which you wish someone would have done differently. And so it's really hard. That's a vulnerable position. I said, hey, man, at the very least, I would have liked for you to cite your source, or at the very least called me and said, hey, are you okay if I use some of this? And so that was not fun working through that. But here's when I know I'm in trouble, is when I'm rehearsing all these conversations and I'm not having them. So that was a recent one that was not fun, but I'm getting a lot of practice at it.
What's your theology of money?
That I want it? Well, I believe it's the Lord's. I want as much money as the Lord can trust me with without me killing myself with it. I want to use it to bless both others and myself. Trying to walk through, it's not inherently wrong, but how can we use our resources as a conduit? And I think the Lord is continually testing me in a good way of, hey, can I trust you with this? Is this something that's going to make you look more like me and more like a blessing to this world? Or is this something that you're going to pull into yourself and it's going to wind up bringing about not good things?
Is there something you have in mind that, like, well, this is a recent God saying, hey, let's play a game. Let me see if I can trust you with this.
Sure. I have a long history of the Lord testing and providing and building my faith with vehicles. We're there again now. We've got 2 drivers, and just, man, the car game is just, whenever your car breaks down and you have insufficient transportation, it really shows my sin of disbelief. But I'll try to clip through this quickly. Right before we're getting ready to transition from the church I was working at to start microchurches, finances are real uncertain. We had saved up about $5,000 to buy my son, who was turning 16, a vehicle, which would be really helpful for our family. At the time, I'm discipling 2 guys in my backyard, a missionary and a meth addict. That's a book waiting to be written, or a band, or both. Cheers. And anyway, we're talking through some stuff, and Chris, the former meth addict, who we're going through a book on theology of money, and he just bites down. And I mean, this kid is dirt poor. He's got 3 kids, the way that he's living, but he is just whatever he can. He's blessing, he's giving, he's sacrificing. And he finds out in the midst of all that, they're going from 2 kids to 3. He's like, dude, we're going to need another vehicle. And I just hear the Holy Spirit, give him your minivan. Like, Lord, raise up someone to give him my minivan. Anyway, so I tell Audrey, she says, that's confirmed in my spirit. And so we wind up doing that, give him our minivan, and then we have to sit our son down and say, hey, we believe this is what. It's one thing to make sacrifices for you, but when you're asking your children to make sacrifices. And Simon was great. I said, hey, Simon, I want to invite you into this decision. Your mom and I have this money set aside for a vehicle for you. We believe like the Lord wants us to help give Comstock this vehicle, but then we'll need another vehicle for the family. Are you okay if we use that money to buy a family vehicle? He's like, yeah, sure. I'd like a car, but yeah, I totally get that. So I'm like, wow, this is unbelievable. And it was a real stretch for my wife because she has this imagined life for our kids. Like on your 16th birthday, this is the oldest son who's I love and follows the rules, and he deserves this. And so we weren't able to do that. 3 weeks later, a Volvo station wagon rolls up in our driveway, and a family had decided to give that to Simon. Yeah, and so.
What if Audrey had said, that's not confirmed in my spirit?
I would have waited till we got to a place of mutual submission one to another. I think we're at a place now where, hey, can we pray into this together? And I won't move until you're ready.
What blesses Chris?
Walks in the woods with my dogs and Jesus. Hot coffee, cold beer, good movies, great books. Consequential conversations with other men who are no longer lying or hiding.
What's the most common praise of Chris, and what's the most common criticism of Chris?
You sent me some of these questions beforehand, and this one's pissed me off for some reason. Man, it's got my crawl.
There's some I for sure was going to get to.
Gosh, and to pay attention to that. Why do you think that is? I think praise is Chris's empathetic, passionate, and present. And I've actually asked a number of people, if I wanted to dodge this question, I would say the biggest criticism is I'm unorganized. I have a hard time with details. If I'm really honest with it, and I don't know where this is my self-condemnation or when it's accurate criticism, I am too tender sometimes. I don't feel my feelings, I am my feelings. And so I need to learn the value of endurance and staying in the pocket when things aren't happening the way that I want them to. I don't need to let difficult things rob the joy and the calling of what we're committed to seeing God do in our neighborhood.
You said this question, you weren't happy about this question.
Yeah, I wasn't.
Can you tap into why?
But I consider myself a pretty profoundly self-aware person. And if you had asked me what my weakness was, I would have told you all day long, what is your criticism? So now I'm having to tap into somebody else. What are you fools saying behind my back that I don't know about?
What are your spiritual gifts, and how do people experience them?
Yeah. I think a gift of teaching, prophecy in the sense of, I think I have a strong spiritual intuition around people's souls. I think I have a real spiritual curiosity. I'd like to think I have the spiritual gift of giving and generosity. That was actually something of all the faults and foibles from my dad. He was an incredibly generous man, and I continue to want to be that. I think people experience them in me. Obviously, you're seeing me. This is a fun space for me to operate in. I think I'm at my best when it's me, you, and another dude, and we're just around a fire pit, and we're talking, and I can laugh, and I can be inappropriate with you, and we're having a good time, and then you'll say something, and I'll zero in on that about, hey, tell me more about that, and then the Lord's gifted me to be able to hear your story, and he'll just bring it back up, and I'm going, oh, remember you said this? Do you think these two things are connected? I think people experience that a lot, like, hey, you remember you told me this? Is this influencing this right now? And they're like, dude, I never would have made that connection. And I'm like, oh, bless the Lord. That's great.
A couple times now, you've said to us, if I say, bless the Lord, will you say, oh, my soul?
Yeah.
What's up with that?
I love the Psalms. I think they're incredible It's Jesus' prayer book. And trying to memorize those and have those as a way that gives me language to communicate with the Lord. But that's just, I want to be a kind of person who is practicing the awareness of the presence of the Lord. And so anything that is good, I want to say, bless the Lord. And I want all my soul, all of it, mind, body, heart, hands, everything to participate in that.
Do you enjoy what you do for a living?
Yes, I do.
Let me ask this question. What do you do when you're not working?
I sit on my back porch an inordinate amount of time.
Quantify that inordinate amount for us.
I guess that is circumspect. Probably for at least an hour a day. I enjoy being contemplative. I enjoy solitude. It's in that I experience a deep, abiding intimacy and joy with Jesus. And I enjoy places where words are not sufficient.
Is that ironic as someone who talks for a lot of what they do for a living?
I would agree it is. Yeah. I think somebody once wrote me a letter, said, get alone, get away from people, and get quiet for things that cannot be heard, but only received.
Would we be better served? Would our soul be better served if we were to get quiet and
it's
experience
also,
that?
I would encourage you, it's also, you may not like what you see or hear. C.S. Lewis said, why must all the holy places be dark places? So,
Say that one more time.
why must all the holy places be dark places? It's how do we have calculated intentionality to go into the wilderness?
What's the biggest problem that you're trying to solve right now?
Online giving systems, donor management, the logistics of how to run a freaking church, man. Like all that stuff. Like send me Wade for 6 months, please, or something like this. Give me some dude who's wired logistically and that brings him deep, gratifying joy. I'm stepping into an area of inadequacy and an upstart and trying to go, I love systems that work. It's creating them and finding them that feels like death to me. So that's a problem I'm trying to solve. Another thing I'm trying to solve is how do I get the men in my church emotionally and spiritually healthy? I think, you want to follow?
Is that a problem only your church has?
I don't think so. I am obsessed with what environments and pathways lead to maturity, spiritually, emotionally, and physically, and holistically. Not just proportioning those things out over here and segmenting them, but a fully integrated life where Jesus shows up when you're at your most stressed, rather than reverting back to immature behavior and coping mechanisms.
If you were to quantify guys in your church, what percentage of them are, your words, emotionally, spiritually healthy?
That's a good question. I think they're on the pathway. I'd say about half of them are aware and know that they need to do work. It's the ones that are unaware that I want to be patient with and go, okay, hey, how you talk to your wife is a big deal.
It's just you and me talking.
Okay.
Yeah. Emotional, spiritual health, how critical is that for a man who's being trusted with the power to do good and evil?
I think it's mission critical. This is a quote from that book. Unhealed wounds from our past lead to habitual sin against God and others. I'll say it again because I underlined it. Unhealed wounds from our past lead to habitual sin against God and others. And I think part of, This is just me waxing it. I'm embarrassed for the leaders of our churches that continue to create toxic leadership culture because they have never named some of that stuff in their own life. So, yeah.
We'll tap into the prophetic gift a little bit for a second.
Okay.
Can you imagine, sanctified imagination? What would be the impact of 200 men making some serious progress in emotional and spiritual health? How consequential would that be?
I think your children's lives would look radically different. Spiritual and biological. I think you would create a legacy for them to walk in, and that one day you'd stand before the throne of grace and there would be a great, extended, beautiful spiritual family back there who has no idea what your name was. What could be better?
What's the last good fight you've had?
Again, I'm not great at this, right? I'm trying to work in my. This is silly, but my youngest son, Christopher, he's a stud flag football player. And he just went undefeated after their team never won a game the season before. So it was amazing. But I live in you guys don't struggle with this. It's just us in Tennessee where we idolize our kids and their sports performance. I know you guys don't struggle with any of that, right? Like there's not like an inordinate amount of time and money that is ridiculously spent on your children's success on the athletic field, which has nothing to do with us as men, right? That's none of my issues. But Christopher dominates, and it's weird for me to parent a kid who's excellent at something. That's just this. I'll help you when you suck and fail. That's my sweet spot. Oh, crap, you're great. I don't know what to do. But I have to remove myself from all the other parents and watch the games. It was a championship, so I go to the other side of the field where I can be alone and not get emotionally triggered. And afterwards, they win. It was a close game. My daughters come running up, and they go, "Dad, did you hear what those kids were saying about Christopher?" And immediately, because he's black, my defenses are already up, and I'm ready to breathe fire. There's 2 teenage kids who were running the thing, and they were making fun of Christopher because he scored a touchdown. They were telling the other kids on the team, "Tell him he's short, and you're going to squash him." Abject rage, right? Because unhealed wounds lead to habitual sin against God and others, and there's still a kid who's gotten picked on who needs some satisfaction out of some teenagers on the other side of the field. So I just said, "Point him out to me right now." They're like, "What?" "Dad, no." I'm like, "Point him out to me." They're like,
What did they think was going to happen when they went over to you and
based
said,
off my case history, nothing, right? I'm going to gossip about him, have side conversations. So Maggie goes, my daughter, who's the big feeler, she's like, "No, Dad." Maggie's like, "Right there and right there." I said, "Great, we're going to pray for our enemies. Somebody hurt them, and they're hurting him. So, Jesus, would you help them? Now I need to have a conversation with them." And so I start walking over this kid's.
You hate confrontation?
I hate confrontation,
Okay.
but I'm not personally offended. I'm offended on behalf of
You
someone
love
else.
justice?
Yes. So I just put a hand on that kid's shoulder, and I said, "Hey, buddy, see that short kid over there?" He's like, "Yeah." I said, "That's my son." And he just said, "Yeah, he's good. He is, isn't he?" "Okay." Does that constitute as a passive-aggressive fight?
Did you have any fleeting thoughts of, point him out to me? Now, Which ones are their dads?
Yeah, I'm not worried, but I can run fast.
What have you read lately in the Bible that you can't let go of? It has stirred you,
Yeah.
gripped you.
Yeah, it's so simple. As part of our micro churches, we read through the Bible together daily, and so we just launched another one. We go through the book of Acts and just say, hey, can it be real and can it be us? And I think it's Acts 17. Paul's doing his great Mars Hill speech, and he just says this one line that just struck me. He said, God doesn't need to be served. He's created everything in this world, and it says, in him we have breath and life and everything we need. And it's like my shoulders just relaxed. And I think in the season of life I'm in, I'm leading into really, really intentional, petitional prayer, asking for things, praying, spiritually walking our neighborhood, advocating on behalf of other people. But it just felt like a centering prayer. Hey, before I get into my anxiety-ridden litany of all the things that need fixing that are broken in and around me, in God, I have life, and I have breath, and I have everything in this world I need.
Do you have a favorite sin?
Oh, yeah. I would say probably self-condemnation is at the core of it. And I've got favorite coping mechanisms with that. But I don't know. I do know there is just a rehearsal of shame that runs through my brain of things I should have done differently or could be different.
Now, you shared with me yesterday that I sent a lot of these to you, and you had asked your daughter.
Uh-huh.
What are some of these questions we've talked about that these men here should be asking people in their family?
All of them. We went out for pizza, and it was Christopher's celebration for winning the championship. And my daughter wanted to come, and so I said, hey, let's just you and I get a booth, and trying to connect with her relationally where she's at. And here's what makes me angry, but at the same time I will engage with, is this generation, without this, they're lost. Like, I want eye contact. Let's go. Here we go. Lock and load. And I think with her and her anxiety, that's a way that she can communicate. So I pulled out my phone and I said, hey, look. And I think just the fact that I have the phone in my hand is putting her at ease. So I said, here's some questions. I'm going to do this men's retreat that they're asking me. I'm going to ask them to you. So I just asked them to her. Let her pass on the ones or dodge the ones that she wanted to. But there was a couple she asked. I said, ooh, tell me more about that. I think more than anything, I'm learning the power of great questions and engagement with my kids. There is so much I want to say, but I'm really practicing listening.
Would you mind to share what you told me she said with one of these?
What's your favorite sin? Yeah. She said lying and hiding. I'm like, bravo. Bravo. What I so desperately want to communicate to her is, when you are vulnerable, even about the most shameful parts of who you are, it doesn't make me love you less. It makes me love you more. And I think as someone who's prophetically wired, and don't use curse words here, tell me the truth. Oh, I can work with anything if we're working from the truth. But she's got that default skitter, I don't want to disappoint. I tell you what you want to hear so that I can do what I need to do. So, yeah.
Where do you turn if you self-medicate?
Yeah, I think Robert's story is my story to a T. I love boobies. That's my coach. Sorry, that didn't go over well. That will always be my drug of choice. Now, in the past 10 years, I've experienced incredible transformation and forward moving in that, and just have set up a system of accountability. Like, I don't have internet on my phone. There's just some things I know I can't be around. It's only a matter of time till stress and temptation overcome me. So I just want to remove some of those things from my life so that I can be who I need to be. But yeah, that appetite will always be, I think, where I medicate the most. So if I can get instant joy and gratification without having to work for it or be vulnerable for it, that's going to be a temptation. So now I just got to watch out with like food or drinking. Just watch out for unhealthy attachments with those things.
Do you have very much experience with pride and anger?
I think I'm working on anger. And I'm learning that anger is a real healthy emotion. God feels it, and we're designed to feel it. It tells me something's wrong in me and my environment. Unhealthy anger, I think, turned inward turns into depression and isolation or rage. But yeah, I'll recently stepped back into marriage counseling, and the guy's working through attachment theory, but he walked Audrey and I through this grid because we had a couple toxic dances that we were doing. So he did an autopsy on them and just kind of showed us where we were doing some things. He said, usually it's a descending thing, like, right, you've got rage, underneath that is anger, underneath that is frustration, and underneath a frustration is an unmet expectation. And many of us do not have the courage to ask for what we want and be okay if we don't get it.
Why don't we have the courage? Are we not aware? What are we afraid of?
That's a great question. I'll speak for me. I don't have the courage to ask for what I want for, one, because I don't know if I can deal with the rejection if I don't get it, or two, I don't think I deserve it in the first place. So I'm going to try to manipulate and get it met sideways or drop hints. I'm not going to come through the front door and have the courage to tell you, here's who I am, here's what I want, and it's okay if I don't get it. That's been great language for in our marriage. Hey, I'm going to try to have the courage to ask for what I want, and it's okay if you don't give it to me. But I do need to express it, or it's going to go inward, and I'm going to wind up going sideways or resentment or passive-aggressive.
How do you practice self-care?
My physical health is huge for my mental health. So I think making sure that I'm walking, make sure that I'm exercising. The food that I put in my body directly affects my mental health. And so understanding that there's a correlation to that. And that doesn't mean that I don't feast, that I don't love to eat indulgent comfort foods. In fact, we're going to talk about comfort food in the next section. But it does need to be that they do need to be subordinated. And it needs to be underneath, I think, the Lord's leadership. Making sure that their Sabbath keeping has been huge for me. And it's something I continue to learn. How do I take a day off not to be productive, but just to pray and play with God and the people around me?
If you could speak to these men about anything you're not going to talk about, next session for 2 minutes, what rises to the top?
Maybe Sabbath keeping. And I don't mean that as a legalistic thing. I mean it as a joy and an invitation that Jesus has invited us into. So much of who we are as men is defined by our efficiency and our productivity. And that Sabbath is an assassin for that. It kills off the hamster wheel in my brain that is constantly working, producing, and trying to get results so that I feel like I have value. When our kids were younger, I asked Audrey, I said, can our kids grow up, even with a dad who's on church staff, and Sabbath be the greatest day of their week? So how do we pray and play together? How do we do things that we truly enjoy just for the sake of enjoying them and call it worship? How do we strategically unplug? And just, when you start doing it, by the way, you're like an addict going through withdrawals. Like, it's miserable. You're like, get me back to my fix, man. I just need to do something. And for For me, Sabbath isn't about inactivity. I think Willard put it this way one time. Like spiritual disciplines are applying effort to change something you can't by direct effort. So the mental decision to go, my checklist of responsibilities is not finished. And I'm going to trust, Lord, that while I rest, you're going to be at work. And that the universe will not fall apart because I haven't gotten everything done. That there has to be joy in unfinished work so that I can be fully present.
Chris, thank you for sitting down.
Thank
in this
you, buddy.
setting. And
Cheers.
thank you for the tears and the words.
You're welcome.
Yes.